Thomas Heatherwick was attending the annual Design Indaba in Cape Town when he first visited the concrete silo complex towering over the V&A's Waterfront's harbour edge. He knew right then that the structure could be transformed into something extraordinary, and that vision has resulted in the first major museum in Africa, the Zeitz Museum of Contemporary Art in Africa in Cape Town, which opened its doors last month. Now, the museum displays strictly 21st century works by a range of young and established artists from across the continent. Well, to tell us more, we're joined from our Sea Point studios by Mark Coetzee, who is the Executive Director and Chief Curator at the Zeitz Museum of Contemporary Art Africa. Very good morning to you, Mark. Welcome to Morning Live. Briefly give us background into how this first major museum came about.
I think that there were a number of parties that were very interested in creating a platform for the extraordinary creativity, both from our country and from the continent. The V&A Waterfront had this extraordinary old silo. They wanted to do something with it to contribute something back to the Western Cape. Thomas Heatherwick, the acclaimed British architect, joined. And then Mr. Zeitz, the former CEO of Puma, had built this amazing art collection. These two bodies came together to create the first major museum of contemporary art in Africa.
Now, the museum opened its doors last month. Firstly, take us through how well it's been received. And secondly, in words, if you could paint us a picture of just some of the amazing and magnificent structures that can be seen at the museum.
Well, we have over 80 white cube galleries, over another 20 found spaces. So it's the biggest museum on the continent dealing with art. As you come in, you'll see sculptures from Zimbabwe, paintings from Benin, performances from South Africa, and all of these objects create a story of who we are as Africans, the narrative of who we are in this place and time. And then the grain silo, which has been preserved very, very carefully. It's a heritage structure. So you'll see the old pipes, the tubes, the workings of this factory that exported the food from this part of the world to the rest of the globe, sensitively interacting with these extraordinary artworks. When you walk in, for instance, there's the sculpture by the South African artist Nicholas Globo, which is a massive dragon that hangs from a 33-meter-high atrium. And as he hovers there, there's this extraordinary soundtrack and these lighting effects. There's galleries filled with 9 screen projections, which are run by these mega brain computers, where the images and the sound interact with each other. So I think that what's so exciting when you visit is contemporary art is not splashes of canvas on a canvas. It's not obscure things. It's images that we relate to, subjects that we relate to, and digital technologies which are right of the most cutting-edge moment right now.
Mark, I can tell you that I absolutely agree with you. Just looking at some of the images that we've just seen on screen, I mean, some of these pieces are really just historic. They're so rich in texture, in color, in history. And the museum does display works strictly from the 21st century. Take us through the significance of that.
I think that our public museums and many of our corporate collections have covered the colonial period and then the 20th century, and we felt that we wanted to do something which really dealt with this moment in time, a place where our youth could come, they could learn about each other. Intercultural understanding is so important in a multicultural, diverse country like we live in. We really have to understand each other. So we wanted to do something of this moment which deals with the issues of living in the 21st century, whether that's fear or desire, whether that's imagination or tradition, and give every individual an opportunity not only to see the aspects of their culture represented, but also to have a platform for their voices to be heard by fellow South Africans and the world.
Mark, the museum itself is multi-layered. It is just this magnanimous structure. I mean, tell us about the 80 individual galleries that actually surround the atrium.
So when you arrive, there's 9 floors, And there's very special focuses in the museum. Photography, for instance. Remember, photography has played such an important process in the liberation struggles in South Africa, the anti-apartheid movement. Photographers could get in, get that picture and get out. Costume, fashion is such an important part of, it began in Africa. The moving image, digital technology. So through these galleries, as you progress, you read the story of Africa. You read who we are as a people, how we want to be seen, our aspirations, our desires, and what better to do that than the greatest living artists of our time?
Mark, thank you very much for your time. You certainly have taken us through some of the exciting development that has happened in the form of that museum. Thank you very much. That was Mark Coetzee, the Executive Director and Chief Curator of the first major museum in Africa, the Zeitz Museum of Contemporary Art Africa in Cape Town, which opened its doors last month. It displays strictly 21st century works by a range of young and established artists from across the continent.